Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silver Mont, and this is my review of Darksiders Genesis, 4th in that series. I played the game on Steam and bought it on a sale as I was a fan of Darksiders as a series. 2 in particular is a great game, and notice this one has co-op, and I love me some co-op. So that said, what is Darksiders Genesis? Whilst the isometric camera might make you think of Diablo, this game is not loot-driven, and is a lot closer to something like, say, Lara Croft and the Temple of Osiris or the Guardian of Light. An isometric action puzzle game, although far more weighted towards action than puzzle. In effect, you have 17 chapters to play through, exploring, unlocking secrets, and fighting hundreds of enemies as either war or strife. 2 of the 4 horsemen, and marking the first playable appearance of strife. If you play solo, you can swap between the 2 at any time, whereas in co-op play you'll be able to pick one, although you can still swap at any time if your partner agrees. War uses a great sword and is, ergo, a close-range fighter, whereas Strife uses a pair of firearms. Each will acquire numerous upgrades and new tools as the game goes on, allowing you to revisit earlier levels to unlock items you couldn't get before as well. I played the whole game in co-op, playing largely as Strife whilst my friend Doug played as War. Each character has 3 abilities to unlock, 5 ammo types for Strife, or sword enchantments for War to unlock as well as 2 unique tools for each character. War, for example, has a powerful gauntlet he can use to smash crystals and activate mechanisms, whereas Strife has a purple ball he can use to make portals. And there are also creature cores. Effectively, you'll grab the souls of enemies and equip them into a sphere grid style system to augment your character's stats. It isn't super in-depth, but adds another layer of customization and feels pretty good. Whilst the ammo and enchantments don't really feel entirely balanced, because the game gives you the far and away strongest ones early on, which means you're rather discouraged from trying all of them. They are interesting to go through and compare. The better way to have done it, in my opinion, would have been to give us the best ones at the end, so we use the other ones first and experience them all. As is, the electricity ammo for Strife and the death enchantment for War are, by far, the best. Story-wise, well, it's a Darksiders game, although rather shorter one than, say, Darksiders 2. My playtime at completion was 25 hours, although I must point out that at least 3 of those hours were spent on an incredibly hard, but optional, jumping puzzle in the hub area. A jumping segment that gave us many conniptions. Speaking of, I want to touch on the game's bad points now, with a quick preface that I very much enjoyed the game, but these points must be noted. First up, the game has quite a lot of glitches. Lots of terrain glitches, for instance getting stuck or falling through the world. None of these ever really caused much of a problem, and generally it was something we laughed at, but I must point them out. One of them was more severe in that the level hazard involved a giant spinning blade. Touching it was instant death, and even after it was disabled, and clearly motionless, it remained an impassable death zone, consistently. Thankfully we could walk around it a different way. We also experienced slight progression loss issues. Each level has a trickster door you can find and open to get into a small treasure room. We unlocked all of them, then after clearing the game it decided we hadn't cleared them, and we had to go back and reopen 3 or 4 of them, for no readily apparent reason. We also each had 1 crash to desktop during the game, both times happening when we used in-stage loading transitions from one part of the stage to another. Then you have the aforementioned jumping puzzle. It was infuriating, because the game isn't too well equipped to handle this. Your locked and isometric camera angle can make judging certain jumps really hard, and the controls aren't quite precise enough, as one would like, for such tight jumps. A small problem though, I suppose, as this jumping puzzle is entirely optional. Another issue is that the game has the whole swapping characters function, but upgrades and the like do not apply to both characters, so if you're playing through, you'll want to buy upgrades for Strife, right? Well, you can't really buy Strife and War's abilities at the same time, for obvious reasons, because you only have enough money, souls, for one. Which means in co-op it's a lot better to have one player focus on each character. Again, it isn't a huge problem, but I would have liked to see co-op encourage swapping more, perhaps. Not that I hated playing as just one character, mind you. You'd be right to think that most of these are nitpicks that didn't overly impact my enjoyment of the game. The story isn't very strong, the presentation's nothing to write home about, but then I don't think you'd expect that from a game like this. If you go in expecting a fun, action co-op game to play with a friend, you will find it. There are bugs, there are glitches, none really impeded the fun, thankfully. The arena system could be improved, but again it's nice to have that included at all and not be some sort of DLC. The game even has unlockable skins. A bit funny as you barely ever see your 100 pixel high characters, but it's nice to have them be part of the base game and not be paid DLC. Performance-wise, it ran fine on my machine at maxed out settings, although, funnily enough, if my friend Doug ran it maxed out, he couldn't hit 60 FPS, and I was able to see that. His character would be moving at a lower frame rate, even though my game was running fine. It was a strange sight to behold. It's also not a huge game, which is really nice in these days of every game being like 50, 100 gigabytes or more. Instead, it only took up about 10 gigabytes or so on my hard drive. So if you're looking for a fun, action, slight puzzle game to play with a friend, I can highly suggest this one. And again, if you haven't played Darksiders 2, that's another one I can give a big thumbs up to. It's a much longer game, with a lot more depth to it, but no co-op. Darksiders Genesis also has an unlockable Apocalyptic Difficulty when you beat the game, so you can always replay it. Worth pointing out that after we beat the game once, and got to level 101 in the arena, we had basically every item and skill completely maxed out. All we needed to do to 100% the game was to beat Apocalyptic Difficulty. So if you're an achievement hunter, it's a pretty easy game to platinum. But yeah, if you have a friend to play with, definitely check it out. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Ciao. Wow.
You not entertained?